In 2016, Oliver Burke hit the headlines and garnered international attention when he became the most expensive Scottish player in history after controversial German club RB Leipzig shelled out £13 million for the 19-year-old. Often compared to Gareth Bale, he was tipped by many to become a huge star. Over 7 years on, and as we so often see in this game, it hasn't really worked out for him. With the benefit of hindsight, we can pinpoint a few crucial decisions as being key to his downfall. Oliver Burke was born in Kirkcaldy, Scotland, but brought up in Melton Mowbray, England.
A place called Melton Mowbray, which is about 30 minutes from Nottingham.
At the age of 8, he joined local club Mowbray Rovers. He was with them for only a year before he was spotted by the eagle-eyed scouts of Nottingham Forest. Here, he was given the nickname Twisty by teammate Tyler Walker.
When I came to the club, he actually thought my name was Oliver Twist. Why didn't he ask me my name? But
he progressed very well at the City Ground, with the most rapid and striking developments being physically, as he grew to over 6 foot and had a very broad and muscular build by the age of 17. He was regarded by the coaches as one of their very best prospects, his blistering pace and ability to beat defenders being seen as extremely valuable. By the start of the 14-15 season, he was already playing with the under-21s. Keen not to lose their brightest young talent, they offered him his first professional contract on 19th September 2014. A delighted Burke signed without hesitation. It was a lot earlier than I was expecting. It was a shock, but I have worked very hard for this. Forest has been a massive part of my life. This is the best thing that ever happened to me. Unbeknownst to him, things were about to get even better, as just 4 days later, he was handed his first team debut, coming on in the 86th minute of the League Cup third round loss to Spurs. He went back to playing for the youth teams for the bulk of the season though, and he was a key man in helping the under-18s to reach the quarter-finals of the FA Youth Cup, where Burke was once again thwarted by Tottenham. A week or so afterwards, and he made his league debut, getting a 26-minute run-out in a thrilling 4-4 draw against Blackpool. He ended that season with a short-term loan to Bradford in League One. After signing a 3-year contract extension in the summer, the 15-16 campaign was to be Burke's breakout. After spending the majority of the first half of the campaign in the under-21s, he got handed a chance at the end of December. Brought on late in the second half against Leeds, he had the chance to win the game in the 90th minute, but hit the post instead. 2 days later, and he was rewarded with a start against Cardiff, and he opened his account for Forest and the scoring after only 9 minutes, motoring into space to receive the ball, driving into the box and finishing beautifully with the outside of his right boot. He scored on his next start in 2 games' time, a towering header against Bolton. After this, he would make 12 more appearances in the final 19 games of the season, 3 of which were starts. Burke caught the eye with his pace and athletic physique, which allowed him to shield the ball as his teammates caught up and hold his own in 50-50s. But he was the most potent threat when his physical attributes were combined with his technical ones, like his burst touch, flair and dribbling, which made him a nightmare for defenders, as not only was he willing to run at them, but he was more than able and damned hard to stop. It wasn't just Forest fans that he was impressing, as in March 2016, Scotland boss Gordon Strachan called him up to the senior squad, making his debut at Hampden Park, replacing Matt Ritchie in the 82nd minute of a friendly against Denmark. Strachan had this to say about the development of hot prospects: "We promote them as soon as they are good enough. He is big enough and strong enough, so bang, here you go. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Gareth Bale, but the similarities are there. He's definitely got the potential to be as good as him." However, the young winger was far from the finished article and had some frustrating shortcomings in his game. His lack of awareness and selfishness led him to twist and turn himself into a corner, rather than look up and find the pass which would allow promising attacks to continue. Like many wide players at the start of their careers, his end product could sometimes leave a lot to be desired, with crosses or shots at goal simply failing to find the target sometimes. His decision making also had room for improvement, as he struggled to always choose the correct option. Nonetheless, these are all things that consistent game time could fix, and the arrival of French manager Philippe Montagnier in the summer of 2016 saw that wish granted. After a great pre-season in which he netted 3 times in 6 matches, he was handed a start for the first match of the 2016-17 campaign. Burke repaid his new gaffer's faith as he scored and had a huge role in the build-up of the winner in a 4-3 thriller against Burton Albion. This was followed up by back-to-back away losses to Brighton and Brentford respectively. The next match was another 4-3 classic, this time against Wigan, as Burke bagged a brilliant brace to ensure he was once again on the winning side. He continued his stonking start to the season with arguably his best goal of the 4, a close-range strike from a tight angle following an electric dribble against Leeds. At this point, Forest fans were desperate to see the transfer window close and could only pray that the precocious and productive Scot was still on their books when it did, as the buzz around the new Gareth Bale was reaching fever peak. Liverpool, Man United and Bayern Munich, amongst others, were all credited with an interest, and it was reported that West Brom had had a £6 million bid rejected. However, in the last couple of days of the window, Bundesliga new boys and most hated club in Germany, Red Bull Leipzig, came in with a reported £30 million bid. And here we reach the first real decision point of Burke's story, but this choice belongs to Forest chairman Fawaz Al-Hawasi. Accepting the bid means the club nets a handsome sum for a player who had not even completed a full season. Although he was in fine form, there was no guarantee that he wouldn't fall off or even pick up a bad injury, which could result in his value dropping considerably. This was the safe option. But if he rejected the offer, he would gain the respect and admiration of the fans. He would retain the most exciting talent in the championship, who, if he continued to score goals at the same rate throughout the season, would see his value skyrocket, potentially to 2 or 3 times Leipzig's bid. Not only that, but such a potent player could even see them promoted to the Premier League. In the end, Fawaz chose the easy option and accepted the bid. The second decision was all Burke's to make. Would he stay at the club which he had been at since the age of 9, had developed him and had given him the platform to show off his electric talents? Would he give his all to help them achieve promotion and then decide on his next move with a full season of football under his belt? Or would he move to Germany with an ambitious new club with state-of-the-art facilities, some of the best minds in the game, a philosophy of developing special young talents, an exciting attacking brand of football, and the chance to test himself in one of Europe's top 5 leagues, and, I don't want to be naive here, probably a very handsome pay packet as well? His choice was the same as Al-Hassawi's, and on the 28th of August 2016 he became the most expensive Scottish footballer ever, sealing a move to RB Leipzig for £30 million on a 5-year contract. This move indeed sparked fury from the Forest faithful, who simply couldn't believe the lack of ambition shown by the owner. In an interview with DW Sport, Burke explained his reasoning for choosing Leipzig.
It's everything that I've been looking for. I was going to visit Tottenham and stuff like that, but I just said no because Leipzig showed enough love and enough care and attention and little details. People are lovely as well, and the club, look at the facilities, it's like one of the best in the world, you know, like it's got everything you need. I don't regret it one bit, and I'm happier than I've ever been.
J.Halvorsen had this to say about the move. The Premier League is the place to be. I thought that was the next step for him. Who watches the German league? I would rather see a young Scottish talent like him playing in the Premier League. Personally, I don't think that Leipzig or the Bundesliga was the wrong destination. On the contrary, it was an ambitious and brave move. I feel that the timing was wrong, and he would have been better off staying in England for at least another year. He looked to be guaranteed regular first team minutes for Forest and was in fine form. The experience he would have got playing a whole season in the Championship would have been invaluable. Anyway, 7 days after becoming a record breaker, he made his first start for Scotland, playing 66 minutes of the 5-1 mauling of Malta in the World Cup qualifiers. And 6 days after that, he made his debut for his new club. Boss Ralph Hasenhüttl threw him on with just 20 minutes to play, with the scores at 0-0 against Dortmund, to a great reception from his new fans.
Feted as the Scottish Gareth Bale.
He had an instant impact, feeding Werner with a great through ball, but the striker's angled shot was saved. With just seconds left on the clock, Burke picked up the ball just outside of the box and drove forward before unselfishly picking out fellow debutant Navi Keita with a perfect low cross to slam it into the roof of the net and give Leipzig an impressive victory, their first ever win in the Bundesliga. A couple weeks later, and he scored 5 minutes into his first start against Cologne, showcasing his speed and agility to latch on to a clever through ball. He would feature in almost every game for Leipzig that season, but found starts very hard to come by, making just 5 of them, as he totaled only 617 minutes on the pitch. The main reason for this is obvious. Burke is very versatile and can play on the left wing, the right wing, or as a centre forward. In each of these positions, there was real quality ahead of him in the pecking order: Emil Forsberg, Marcel Sabitzer, Timo Werner, and Yusuf Poulsen. The other factors which led to him being more on the fringes that season were hinted at by his manager and the coaches. Ralph Hasenhüttl said that Burke had an empty hard drive, seeming to refer to the player's unwillingness to track back. Director of football Ralph Rangnick appeared to cast aspersions on the footballing education he had received at Forest. He's good on the ball for a player of that size and that tempo. Where he still has to improve is tactically. When do I have to do what? Our style of football is a little bit different from what he was used to England.
I feel as though here is more You have to work for the team on and off the ball.
Obviously, those are things that nobody has told him in the past, and he has to learn that. He has improved, but there is still plenty of room for further improvement. And it was that room for improvement that made him one of the most exciting prospects in the Bundesliga. Leipzig had exceeded all expectations in their debut Bundesliga campaign, finishing second and securing Champions League football. Burke looked set to continue his footballing education and development against the best players in the world. However, after captaining Scotland's under-20s to a third-placed finish in the Toulon tournament, which included an historic victory over Brazil, he was faced with his next major career decision. Premier League club West Bromwich Albion had come in with a bid for him, which had been accepted by Leipzig. Would he choose to stay at RBL, where he was playing alongside some of the best youngsters on the planet, and he was undoubtedly improving all the time due to the meticulous and cutting-edge training and high-level coaches? There was also the potential promise of the glory, splendour and spectacle of the Champions League. However, he would have a major fight on his hands to become a regular starter and would most likely continue to be used as an impact sub. Or would he find the lure of the Premier League, the West Midlands and Tony Pulis irresistible? Undoubtedly, he was promised regular first team minutes, and as he would be playing in the richest league on the earth, his remuneration would receive another healthy bump. Oliver Burke made a bizarre and, in my opinion, the wrong decision and accepted the offer from West Brom. On the 25th of August 2017, he broke his own record and again became the costliest Scottish player ever, moving to the Premier League for £50 million on a 5-year contract. In an interview with Sky Sports, he made his own motivations clear.
The more you're playing, the more confident you are. And when I was at RB Leipzig, I wasn't playing so much, or I was coming on for the last 10-20 minutes, and the game's already kind of gone then, so you kind of feel a bit 50-50 about yourself and not so confident. But hopefully I get many games under my belt, and moving to West Bromwich is obviously going to help me, and I think Tony Pulis believes in me a lot.
And while I do understand that starts are important, I feel he had the wrong attitude to being used as a sub. 20 minutes is still long enough to impact the game and impress the gaffer if you have the right mentality. I feel he should have showed a bit more grit and determination and stayed at Leipzig. If he had got his head down and listened and improved, he may have been able to nail down a starting berth. And in my opinion, if there was any club which could have turned Ollie Burke into the player he was tipped to be, it was Red Bull Leipzig. Regardless, whatever promises Burke was made in relation to game time quickly turned to dust. A hamstring injury held him back in the first couple of months under Tony Pulis, the man who had brought him to the Hawthorns. Pulis was sacked on the 20th of November following an abysmal start to the season, and none of the 3 managers who preceded him could find room for the limited footballing intelligence of Oliver Burke in their plans, as he was reduced to a handful of largely unconvincing appearances, a paltry 2 of which were starts, totaling just 356 Premier League minutes, racking up only 2 assists as West Brom were relegated to the Championship. Even in the second tier of English football, new boss Darren Moore was unable or unwilling to accommodate Burke, as he accumulated a measly 48 minutes of Championship game time. On the 5th of January, he was shipped up to Scotland on a half-season loan to Celtic. While Celtic fans were intrigued and reasonably optimistic, many questioned the sense of bringing another wide player into a squad which had a surplus of wingers, most notably a James Forrest who was in some of the best form of his life, tearing it up on the right wing. Now it seems clear to me that the intention was always to play Burke as a striker and provide cover for the injury-plagued Edouard and the unavailable Lee Griffiths. Rodgers was apparently relishing the chance of being the manager who was finally able to unleash the potential of the Scottish Bale, saying this about the 22-year-old loanee: "He's nowhere near the finished article, but he has so many attributes and strengths. I love working with that kind of player, to see if I can extract that bit more." Later, Rodgers would talk more about converting Burke into a centre forward.
And I think that Oliver's equally as comfortable playing up front as he would be wide. I think the difference when he's played up front, you need to coach him in that, and you need to develop him, and you need to, people will say we'll put an arm around him, but it's a bit more than that. You got to help him on the field. You got to sit down and go through, like we've done, analysing his game. But he has all the tools to be an outstanding front player.
Burke enjoyed an energetic start to his Celtic career and was full of pace, purpose, and for the first real time in his career, consistent end product, as he scored 4 and assisted 2 in his first 9 domestic fixtures, as Rodgers' pet project of turning Burke into a fully programmed clinical centre forward looked like it might just work. Clearly it would need time though, as his shortcomings in front of goal were brutally exposed when the quality of opposition took a big step up in the Europa League against Valencia, where Burke looked rather lost in that false 9 role. Nonetheless, Rodgers really got Ollie, and it finally looked like Big Brendan was going to be the manager to crack the code and bring out the very best of Burke. But then, unfortunately for pretty much everyone involved, Brendan Rodgers did a bunk to Leicester.
A huge welcome to Leicester City Football Club. How does it feel to be here?
Well, it feels great.
Leaving it up to Neil Lennon to try and see the season out successfully. Naturally, Lennon's focus was on winning the league and cup, not on trying to rigorously drill and develop a low knee, and players like James Forrest and Odsonne Edouard were the best options to achieve those goals, so Burke was more or less shunted to the sidelines. He wasn't even named in the squad for the semis or the final of the Scottish Cup. Celtic won the treble that season. So Burke got his hands on the first and so far only silverware of his career. Upon returning to West Brom, sporting director Luke Dowling hit out at how Burke had been handled by Lennon. Once Brendan left to go to Leicester, the treatment he got from the manager in place, well, subsequently, we do not expect any of our players to go anywhere near Celtic Football Club. His time at Celtic had at least put him back in contention for the national team, and he was involved in their Euro qualifiers, even scoring a big goal against Cyprus, his first and only for Scotland. West Brom, however, wanted nothing to do with him and sent him off on another loan for the 1920 season, this time to Deportivo Alaves in La Liga. Here, he was actually given a fair crack of the whip to show what he was all about, as he made 31 appearances, of which 14 were starts. But he flattered to deceive, and the same old complaints reared their head again. Poor positioning, no tactical sense, less than sterling work rate, and a terribly low output for an attacker, just 1 goal and 2 assists. He then joined Sheffield United in a swap deal for Callum Robinson. Manager Chris Wilder was another one who thought the centre forward would be the position which would get the best out of Burke. It wasn't. He scored just once in 25 league appearances. Granted, that strike was a famous winner against Manchester United at Old Trafford, undoubtedly the highlight of his time at Bramall Lane, maybe the only high point he had there. Perhaps the most damning indictment of that season for Burke was that of the 13 starts he made, he did not complete the full 90 once, with Wilder usually hooking him at around the hour mark, as he proved to be toothless and impotent against the quality of the Premiership defences all too often. Burke once again experienced relegation that year. Then he made just 3 championship appearances for Sheffield United in the 21-22 campaign before he got injured. He was sent on loan to Millwall in January, where injury hampered him again. After recovering, he contributed somewhat to Millwall's late surge up the table with 2 goals and 1 assist in his last 8 games as the Lions finished 9th. He then made a shock return to the Bundesliga as Werder Bremen scooped him up in June 2022, reportedly for free, despite the fact he wasn't at the end of his Sheffield United contract, with the Blades apparently desperate to be short of him. He made a stunning start to life back in the Bundesliga, as he scored a dramatic late equaliser after only being brought on in the 84th minute against Stuttgart in his second match. The very next game, and he was at it again, playing the role of super sub to complete an astonishing late comeback as his team scored 3 goals in 6 stupendous minutes to knock a dazed Dortmund for 6 and win the game 3-2.
Oliver Burke for Werder Bremen! What an ending!
After that, he was used almost exclusively off the bench, but failed to have the same impact, providing just 1 assist in the next 12 games. He returned to Millwall on another loan, and just like at Werder Bremen, he started brightly, with a goal and an assist in his first 4 matches before falling off massively. This season, he's on yet another loan, again in the Championship, this time with Birmingham City, who have plunged themselves into a self-created Wayne Rooney-shaped crisis. Burke's form hasn't helped, as he has contributed precisely zilch in terms of goals or assists, and is the frequent target of the ire of the fans, many of whom can't understand how he keeps getting picked, and wish he had followed Rooney out the door. Burke turns 27 this year, and we are far past the point where he can be considered a project player. That project should have been long since completed. A couple of hasty and poor choices right at the start of his career, driven perhaps by the impatience of youth, have led to the substandard player we see today, who has so much athleticism and raw talent, but is shockingly lacking in so many key areas. So much time and money has been wasted on trying to turn Burke into the player that he could have been, judging on his Nottingham Forest form. But when such a long list of decent coaches have failed to do so, you have to start asking the question, who is the problem? His former West Brom teammate Joe Worrell explained Burke's issues very well in an interview with The Athletic. "I tell him all the time that I wish I had his ability. I would be one of the best in the world if I had that. It's not that he doesn't care, but it is about doing everything correctly on and off the pitch to give yourself the best chance. I've seen loads of players like that. Players who make me wish I could get in their heads for half an hour. You just want to show them that if they work just a little bit harder, if they do the extra hours, they could be so much more than they are. Another comment you will see being made over and over again by the fans of the many clubs he has been at on social media posts is that he is simply a speedboat without a driver.